Carregou, perdeu a passada, voltou no Pedro, rolou no Neymar, pintou, faz Neymar, faz Neymar!
Imagine, just for a second, the humid, cracked asphalt streets of Mogi das Cruzes, a vibrant neighborhood just east of São Paulo, back in 1997. The air is completely thick with the pulse of Brazilian hip-hop. Neighbors are chatting from open windows, and right there, in the very middle of it all, is a 5-year-old boy. He doesn't have proper football boots. He's just kicking around this half-deflated ball. But even then, he possesses this relentless hunger, already doing things with that ball that grown men simply cannot explain. His name is Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. And today in this explainer, we are going to explore the absolutely breathtaking journey of how that barefoot boy transformed into a global icon. Okay, let's dive into this. To truly grasp the whole phenomenon of Neymar, you've got to understand the canvas he was painted on. As Neymar himself says, every kid in Brazil starts playing street football early. It's literally in their blood. You see, street football isn't just some pastime in Brazil. It's a cultural heartbeat. It's the primal, chaotic origin of his style, where tight spaces and rusted bicycles demanded lightning-fast feet and pure, unadulterated creativity. And it wasn't just raw culture we're talking about. It was this sheer, terrifyingly obvious natural talent. His childhood coach, Betinho, recognized it immediately. But here's the thing. That talent required immense sacrifice. Neymar's family was incredibly modest, living right near the city's dumping ground. His father, a former footballer whose own career was cut short, utterly refused to let poverty dictate his son's future. He actually worked 3 jobs simultaneously just to fund young Neymar's ambitions. It is absolutely crucial to feel that weight. The sacrifices his family made that paved the runway for his completely unstoppable rise.
Section 1. The Boy from Brazil.
From this point on, his development accelerates at a lightning-fast pace. His trajectory changes the landscape of South American football entirely. He starts out as a 7-year-old prodigy at Portuguesa Santista. By 11, he walks through the academy gates of the legendary Santos FC. Yes, the exact same club that gave us Pelé. And what's truly astonishing, by age 14, the mighty Real Madrid invited him to the Santiago Bernabeu. But he rejected them. No way, right? But he did. Santos countered with a massive financial package, and Neymar chose to stay in his homeland. It was a historic decision that led to him stepping onto the pitch for Santos' senior squad at just 17 years old. During his electrifying era at Santos, his statistics were staggering, and honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. He scored his 100th professional goal on his 20th birthday. He brought Santos their first Copa Libertadores since the days of Pelé. Defenders literally describe the feeling of marking him as chasing smoke. He became known globally as the next Pelé, putting South American football firmly back on the map with his signature rainbow flicks and elasticos. But destiny was calling, leading to a tearful but totally inevitable departure for Europe. Section 2. Conquering European football. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the big question everyone had in 2013. Could this uniquely Brazilian flair survive, let alone dominate, the rigid, tactical intensity of Europe, specifically at FC Barcelona? Well, to answer that, just look at this jaw-dropping number, 364. That is the total number of goals scored by the absolutely terrifying MSN trio, Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, and Neymar, in just a single season. It's a staggering figure that proves he didn't just survive in Europe, he became an essential part of the most devastating forward line in the history of the sport. The absolute pinnacle of this era was the magnificent 2014-15 treble. Barcelona won everything, and Neymar was front and center for the whole shebang, scoring 39 goals across all competitions. I mean, who could forget his clinical finish in the dying minutes of the Champions League final against Juventus? Or his iconic celebration, arms wide, head tilted to the sky, after scoring in extra time in the Copa del Rey final? He was only 23, and he was quite literally conquering the world. But Neymar, he's like a sun that demands its own sky. And that brings us to this unprecedented, historic figure. 222 million euros. In August 2017, Paris Saint-Germain activated his release clause, creating the largest transfer fee in the history of football. This wasn't just a player changing teams, guys, this was a global cultural event. Thousands lined the Champs-Élysées. Neymar was brought to Paris to make a massive statement. PSG intended to conquer Europe. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark duality that defined his time in France. On one hand, you have these towering triumphs, leading PSG to 3 consecutive league titles and driving them to their first ever Champions League final in 2020. But on the other side, a really heartbreaking shadow. From 2018 onwards, a devastating series of foot, ankle, and knee injuries threatened to completely steal his absolute prime. It was this brutal, relentless cycle of surgery, rehabilitation, and heartbreak that took an immense emotional toll on him. Section 3. The Weight of a Nation. Because while he's navigating all these crazy highs and lows of club football, he was simultaneously carrying the hopes of an entire country. I want you to try and imagine the sheer psychological weight of 160 million Brazilians watching your every single move. Let's go back to one very specific, heart-stopping image. Rio de Janeiro, August 2016. It's the Olympic final against Germany. It all comes down to a penalty shootout, and Neymar steps up last. The whole nation holds its breath. He strikes it, he scores. Brazil wins its first ever Olympic gold in football. Neymar immediately collapses to the turf, openly weeping. It was just this beautiful moment of pure, unadulterated relief. So, the crucial point is, the true measure of his national impact is what he achieved in that famous yellow jersey. Looking at his staggering records, the one that stands out the absolute most is those 79 international goals. In 2023, he did the unthinkable. He officially surpassed the great Pelé's all-time goal-scoring record for Brazil. The king was succeeded. History was completely rewritten right before our eyes. But being the face of Brazilian football? Yeah, that was never simple. Pelé himself summed it up perfectly when he said, "The god of football gave you the gift. What you do complicates it." Neymar has always had a deeply complex relationship with his divine talent and the brutal trials he faced on the pitch. Think back to that devastating broken vertebrae he suffered on home soil during the 2014 World Cup, an injury that ended his tournament right before Brazil's catastrophic semifinal loss. The gift of his talent has always been intertwined with profound hardship. Section 4. Beyond the pitch. So now we're going to strip away the massive brand and the staggering wealth for a second to look at the deeply human side of this icon. And I have to ask you, is his story just about football? Actually, scratch that. It's a definitive no. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about Neymar Jr. is the idea that his life only exists within the white lines of the pitch. His off-pitch achievements tell a completely different story. Back in 2014, he self-funded and founded the Instituto Projeto Neymar Jr., right in Praia Grande, in the very same ordinary streets where he grew up. This institute provides a vital lifeline, education, medical care, and sports to thousands of underprivileged kids. He's also served as a UN ambassador for Handicap International. He does all of this because he remembers exactly where he came from. Let's move to and see how this builds into the twilight of his career. After a shocking $100 million a year move to Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia and a pretty devastating ACL tear, came a moment that quite literally moved Brazil to tears. In January 2025, the prodigal son returned home to Santos FC. The boy had come back. And incredibly, despite all his injuries, his genius remains so totally irreplaceable that coach Carlo Ancelotti included him in Brazil's 2026 World Cup squad. When you summarize his monumental career honors, the Champions League, the Copa Libertadores, the domestic titles across multiple countries, the Olympic gold, it's an unbelievable resume for sure. But you know what? His true legacy isn't just the hardware. His legacy is giving an entire generation of Brazilians the permission to believe that joy is a legitimate strategy. He proved that Jogo Bonito, the beautiful game, absolutely lives on, and that the streets can still produce someone the world will talk about forever. And so we leave you with this lingering, provocative thought. Does the world deserve one more chapter? That barefoot kid from the cracked asphalt of Mogi das Cruzes became a global icon who made everyone watching feel a little more alive. As he gears up for what might be his final act on the world stage, we are all left hungry to see exactly what beautiful moments he's going to create next. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I really hope you found it as fascinating as I did. Catch you next time.